Once more she sat behind loud hastening hooves, a speed of armored squadrons, and a voice far heard of chariots bore her from her home. A gulcent earth, awakened in its dumb muse, looked up at her from a vast indolence.
Good morning. So we're reading in Book 7, the Book of Yoga, Canto 1, the joy of union, the ordeal of foreknowledge, of the foreknowledge of death and the heart's grief and pain. So we're just reading through this canto continuously, and then we'll go back after we finish and read it passage by passage and discuss it. So just as a kind of brief introduction, Savitri has met Satchivan and they've married, and she went to tell of her choice to her father, the king, and her mother, the queen. And when she was telling, Narad, the heavenly sage, was also present, and he, with his foreknowledge of the future, could see Savitri's fate, that Satchivan would die in just 1 year. So, kind of under questioning by the queen, he reveals this knowledge to them, and the queen tries to dissuade Savitri from her choice to marry someone else, but Savitri persists and says, once my heart is chosen, it chooses not again. So she's fixed on her choice and her fate. And now, in this canto that we're reading, they return back to the forest hermitage where Satchivan is waiting with his family. And Savitri begins her married life with Satchivan. So she is carrying this foreknowledge of his impending death, but keeps it hidden within her own heart, does not reveal this to Satchivan or to his family. So she's bearing this grief, this pain of knowing what is to happen in such a short time. So we've come to page 470 in our first reading through the canto. And I don't have the line number, but it's about, about 15 lines down. Still veiled from her was the silent being within. Can you find that? 188. So, Gerson, would you like to begin reading?
Still veiled from her was the silent being within, who sees life's drama pass with unmoved eyes, supports the sorrow of the mind and heart, and bears in human breasts the world and fate. A glimpse or flashes came, the presence was hid. Only her violent heart and passionate will were pushed in front to meet the immutable doom. Defenseless, nude, bound to her human lot, They had no means to act, no way to save. These she controlled. Nothing was shown outside. She was still to them the child they knew and loved, the sorrowing woman they saw not within. No change was in her beautiful motions seen. A worshipped impress all once vied to serve. She made herself the diligent serf of all. She made her not spared the labor of broom and jar and well, or close gentle tending, or to heap the fire of altar in kitchen. No slight task allowed to others that her woman's strength might do. In all her acts a strange divinity shone, into a simplest movement she could bring, a oneness with the earth's glowing robe of light, a lifting up of common acts by love. All love was hers, and its one heavenly cord bound all to all with her as golden tie.
Thank you. E, would you continue?
But when her grief to the surface pressed too close, these things, once gracious adjuncts of her joy, seemed meaningless to her, a gleaming shell, or were a round mechanical and void. Her body's actions shared not by her will, always behind this strange divided life. Her spirit, like a sea of living fire, possessed her lover and to his body clung, one locked embrace to guard its threatened mate. At night, she woke through the slow, silent hours, brooding on the treasure of his bosom and face. Hung o'er the sleep-bound beauty of his brow, or laid her burning cheek upon his feet. Waking at morn, her lips endlessly clung to his, unwilling ever to separate again, or lose that honeyed drain of lingering joy. Unwilling to loose his body from her breast, the warm, inadequate signs that love must use, intolerant of the poverty of time. Her passion, catching at the fugitive hours, willed the expense of centuries in one day of prodigal love and the surf of ecstasy. Or else, she strove even in mortal time to build a little room for timelessness by the deep union of two human lives. Her soul secluded, shut into his soul.
Thank you.
After all was given, she demanded still. Even by a strong embrace unsatisfied, she longed to cry, "O tender Satyavan, O lover of my soul, give more of love while yet thou canst, to her thou lovest. Imprint thyself for every nerve to keep, that thrills to thee the message of my heart. For soon we part, and who shall know how long? before the great wheel in its monstrous round. Restore us to each other and our love. Too well she loved to speak a fateful word, and lay her burden on his happy head. She pressed the outsurging grief back into her breast, to dwell within silent, unhelped, alone. But Satyavan sometimes half understood, or felt at least with the uncertain answer of our thought blinded hearts the unuttered need, the unplumbed abyss of her deep, passionate want. All of his fading days that he could spare from labor in the forest chewing wood and hunting food in the wild Slavanga glades and service to his father's sightless life, he gave to her and helped to increase the hours by the nearness of his presence and his clasp and lavish softness of heart-seeking words and the close beating felt of heart on heart. All was too little for her bottomless need.
Thank you.
If in his presence she forgot a while, grief filled his absence with its aching touch. She saw the desert of her coming days, imaged in every solitary hour. Although with a vain imaginary bliss of fiery union through death's door and of escape, she dreamed of a body robed in funeral fame. She knew she must not clutch that happiness, to die with him and follow, seizing his robe, across our other countries, travelers glad, into the sweet or terrible beyond. For those sad parents still would need her here to help the empty remnants of their day. Often it seemed to her the age's pain had pressed their coincidence into her single woe, concentrating in her a torture world. Thus, in the silent chamber of her soul, cloistering her love to live with secret grief, she dwelt like a dumb priest with hidden gods, unappeased by the wordless offering of her days, lifting to them her sorrow like frankincense, her life the altar, herself the sacrifice.
Thank you.
Yet ever they grew into each other more, until it seemed no power could rend apart, since even the body's walls could not divide. For when he wandered in the forest, oft her conscious spirit walked with him and knew his action as if in herself he moved. He less aware, thrilled with her from afar. Always the stature of her passion grew. Grief, fear became the food of mighty love. Increased by its torment, it filled the whole world. It was all her life, became her whole earth and heaven. Although life-born, an infant of the hours, immortal it walked, unslayable as the gods. Her spirit stretched measureless in strength divine, an anvil for the blows of fate and time. Or tired of sorrow's passionate luxury, grief's self became calm, dull-eyed, resolute, awaiting some issue of its fiery struggle, some deed in which it might forever cease, victorious over itself and death and tears. The year now paused upon the brink of change. No more the storm sailed with stupendous wings, and thunder strode in wrath across the world, but still was heard a muttering in the sky, and rain dripped wearily through the mournful air, and grew slow drifting clouds shut in the earth. So her grief's heavy sky shut in her heart. A still self hid behind, but gave no light. No ways came down from the forgotten heights. Only in the privacy of its brooding pain, her human heart spoke to the body's fate. End
Thank
of
you.
Canto 1.
So now we'll go back to the beginning.
The joy of union, the ordeal of the foreknowledge of death, and the heart's grief and pain. Fate followed her foreseen immutable road. Man's hopes and longings built the journeying wheels that bear the body of his destiny and lead his blind will towards an unknown goal. His fate within him shapes his acts and rules. Its face and form already are born in him. Its parentage is in his secret soul. Here, matter seems to mold the body's life, and the soul follows where its nature drives. Nature and fate compel his free will's choice, but greater spirits this balance can reverse and make the soul the artist of its fate. This is the mystic truth our ignorance hides. Doom is a passage for our inborn force. Our ordeal is the hidden spirit's choice. Ananki is our being's own degree. All was fulfilled, the heart of Savitri, flower sweet and adamant, passionate and calm, had chosen, and on her strength's unbending road, forced to its issue the long cosmic curve.
Thank you. Let's pause there. So this is quite a significant passage because it summarizes, in a way, this last canto that we read about the way of fate and the problem of pain and suffering. So in that canto, Narad has explained many of the issues surrounding the nature of fate and destiny and why there is pain and suffering in a world created by the divine. And here, Sri Aurobindo summarizes a lot of that. And instead of commenting myself, I'm going to read a little bit from Shraddhavan on this in her book, The English of Savitri, Volume 3, that deals with this book. So she says, here in the first sentence of Book 7, Sri Aurobindo is making a link between what has gone before and what will follow. Now the story is moving on, and we shall see how the fate of Savitri and Satyavan unfolds. The road of fate has been planned and fixed in advance on other planes. Narad has foreseen it, and it is immutable. It cannot be changed. Now Sri Aurobindo makes a general statement which applies not only to Savitri but to all human beings. He says that as we are traveling along the road of destiny, it is our own hopes and longings, our own wishes, that build the wheels of the chariot that is carrying us, leading us blindly towards a destination that we do not know and have not consciously chosen. Man's will is blind. It does not see where his hopes and longings are leading him. But that goal has already been fixed. It is foreseen and immutable. Now Sri Aurobindo continues to explain to us about fate. For any human being, his fate within him shapes his acts and rules his life. We do not know what our fate will be, but nevertheless it determines what we do and rules the course of our life. When we are born, the face and form of our fate, our destiny, are born in us. From the very beginning of our life, we carry it with us. The parentage, the father and mother of our fate, its origin, lies within our secret soul. In this material world, it seems as and what we have to do, and that the soul follows where its nature drives. We feel that we have free will, the possibility and responsibility to choose what we do and where we go. But in fact, very often, our choices are determined by nature and fate, which interact and compel us to choose in a particular way. What we choose is determined by an interaction between fate, which is our soul's choice, and the action of nature on the surface. That is true for most of us all the time, but it is not true for everybody. For ordinary human beings, the course of life is determined by destiny, influenced by the play of nature. But more developed beings, greater spirits, such as Savitri, can reverse this balance. Instead of the soul having to follow nature, nature has to follow the choice of the soul. Apparently, the very worst that could happen is a passage for our inborn force, an opportunity for the soul's strength to come out and express itself in the world. Our ordeal, any very painful, difficult test that we have to pass through, is in fact the hidden spirit's choice. The spirit within us has chosen to pass through that ordeal and has probably even chosen the form that it will take. Ananki is our being's own decree. Ananki is the name given by the ancient Greeks to the goddess of necessity, what cannot be avoided. It is said that when she appeared in the halls of the gods on Olympus, the gods would turn away their faces because they did not want her to notice them. But here Sri Aurobindo is saying that the dreaded necessity which we have to face, which cannot be avoided, has been chosen and decreed for us by our own being. This is how it is for Savitri. Everything that Savitri's heart had chosen was fulfilled. How beautifully the poet describes Savitri's heart. It is both flower sweet and adamant, passionate and calm, as sweet as a flower, but as strong as the hardest rock. If someone is adamant, you will not be able to make them change their mind. Her heart is passionate, capable of very intense feelings, but at the same time, it is perfectly calm. It is calm and intense at the same time. It is Savitri's heart which has made the choice to marry Satyavan, despite his adverse fate. And everything that her heart has chosen will be forced to its issue, to its outcome, on her strength's unbending road. Savitri will not waver in her decision. The road that she has chosen in her strength is straight, unbending. It will not go this way and that way to avoid the consequences of her decision, but go straight to its goal. At the same time, it follows the long cosmic curve. Cosmic means universal. Savitri's choice and her decision have a universal evolutionary significance. Okay, so we'll continue.
Spirit of armor.
Once more she sat.
Okay, sorry. Once more she sat behind loud castanet hoofs. A spirit of armor, squadron on the voice, far hard of chariot bore her from her home. A cautioned earth, wakened in its dumb muse, looked up at her from a vast indolence, hills wallowing in a bright haze, large lands that flow at easy beneath the summer heavens. Region on region, spacious in the sun, cities like chrysolites in the white blaze, and yellow rivers pasting lion maned. Led to the Shalwa Mark's emerald line, a happy front to iron bastionets, and austere peaks in Titan solitude. Once more was near the fair and fated place, the borders gleaming with the grove's delight, where first she met the face of Satyavan. And he saw like one walking into a dream, sometimes beauty and reality, the moon gold sweetness of heaven's earth-born child. The past receded and the future near. Far now behind lay Madra's spacious halls, the white carved pillars, the cool dim alcoves, the tinged mosaic of the crystal floors, the towered pavilions, the wind river cools, and gardens humming with the murmur of bees. Forgotten soon or a pale memory, the fountain splashing the white stone-bound pool, the thoughtful noontides brooding solemn trance, the colonna, the colonna de spring, gray in the quiet eve, the slow moonrise gliding in front of night.
Thank you. Let's pause there. So after this first transition passage from the previous canto on fate, we begin in this passage with continuation of the drama. So Savitri is now returning from her palace with her parents and squadrons of various attendants. They're coming on chariots, going back to the hermitage where Satyavan is living with his parents. So they go through the landscape, the Indian landscape, which is beautifully described here in this passage. Hills wallowing in a bright haze, large lands that lolled at ease beneath the summer heavens, region on region spacious in the sun, cities like chrysolites in the wide blaze. Chrysolites are a kind of a greenish stone. And yellow rivers pacing, lion-maned, led to the Shalwa march's emerald line, that is the line of the forest, the Shalwa forest where Satyavan lives, a happy front to iron vastnesses. Beyond the forest, there are these mountains. Why yellow? Yeah, I don't know, just, kind of muddy. There might have a kind of a yellow tinge. I don't know.
Do you know if this Shalwa and Madra are historical, geographical places that Sri used, or did he make this up?
I'm not quite sure. We'd have to look into it and see. There's a historical place. Yeah, we'd have to see.
This one is bordering Punjab and Afghanistan. In fact, the location I remember from Shatavan. Names historically what it is. No, I think for Eastern. Actually, Madhya, let's say. Not names, but near. That's a rough name. Interesting also something about the geographical, it's happening in the celestial realm or somewhere in the physical thing.
Yeah, no, it's in northern India. Couchant is, I think, like sitting or sitting. Yeah. So, after describing the beautiful landscape on the way, he also describes the palace, the beautiful palace that Savitri is leaving behind. Far now behind lay Madra's spacious halls, the white carved pillars, the cool dim alcoves, the tinged mosaic of the crystal floors, the towered pavilions, the wind-rippled pools and gardens humming with the murmur of bees, forgotten soon or a pale memory, the fountain's plash in the white stone-bound pool, the thoughtful noontide's brooding solemn trance, the colonnade's dream gray in the quiet eve, the slow moonrise gliding in front of night. So let's continue.
Okay, left far behind were now the faces known, the happy silken babble on laughter's lips, and the close clinging clasp of intimate hands, and adoration's light in cherished eyes, offered to the one sovereign of their life. Nature's primeval loneliness was here. Here only was the voice of bird and beast, the ascetic's exile in the dim-souled huge, inhuman forest, far from the cheerful sound of man's blithe converse and his crowded days. In a broad eve with one red eye of cloud, through a narrow opening, a green-flowered cleft, out of the stare of sky and soil they came into a mighty home of emerald dusk. There onward, led by a faint brooding path which toiled through the shadow of enormous trunks and arches, misers of sunshine, they saw low thatched roofs of a hermitage huddled beneath a patch of azure hue. In a sunlit clearing that seemed the outbreak of a glad smile in the forest's monstrous heart, a rude refuge of the thought and will of man watched by the crowding giants of the wood.
Thank you. And here we get a beautiful description of the hermitage, the place where the hermitage is located. Nature's primeval loneliness was here. Here only was the voice of bird and beast, the ascetic's exile in the dim-souled, huge, inhuman forest, far from cheerful sound of man's blithe converse and his crowded days. It's a beautiful, striking line in a broad eve with one red eye of cloud. So it's evening time as they're arriving. The sun is beginning to set. There's this one red cloud in the sky lit up by the setting sun. Through a narrow opening, a green flowered cleft, out of the stare of sky and soil they came into a mighty home of emerald dusk. There onward, led by a faint, brooding path, which toiled through the shadow of enormous trunks and under arches, misers of sunshine, They saw low thatched roofs of a hermitage huddled beneath a patch of azure hue in a sunlit clearing that seemed the outbreak of a glad smile in the forest's monstrous heart. A rude refuge of the thought and will of man, watched by the crowded giants of the wood. And Tinika, or did you read? You'll read next. Tinika. Okay, so B.
Okay. Arrived in that rough-hewn homestead, they gave, questioning no more the strangeness of her fate, their pride and loved one to the great blind king, a regal pillar of fallen mightiness, and the stately, careworn woman, once a queen, who now hoped nothing for herself from life, but all things only hoped for her one child, calling on that single head from partial fate, all joy of earth, all heaven's beatitude. Adoring wisdom and beauty like a young god's, she saw him loved by heaven as by herself. She rejoiced in his brightness and believed in his fate, and knew not of the evil drawing near. Lingering some days upon the forest verge, like men who lengthen out departure's pain, unwilling to separate sorrowful clinging hands, unwilling to see for the last time a face, heavy with the sorrow of a coming day, and wondering at the carelessness of fate, who breaks with idle hands her supreme works. They parted from her with pain-fraught, burdened hearts, as forced by inescapable fate we part from one whom we shall never see again. Driven by the singularity of her fate, helpless against the choice of Savitri's heart, they left her to her rapture and her doom in the tremendous forest's savage charge.
Thank you. And here, after describing the setting, Sri Aurobindo describes the interaction taking place. Savitri's family lingering for some time, unwilling to leave, depart from their daughter, whom they don't know if they will ever see again. And the mother of Satyavan, the stately, careworn woman, once a queen, who now hoped nothing for herself from life, but all things only hoped for her one child, calling on that single head from partial fate, all joy of earth, all heaven's beatitude. Of course, Satyavan's father and mother were also king and queen of this realm, but the king had lost his kingdom, his kingship, his rule over the place. He had lost his eyesight. And after that, they entered this hermitage to live as ascetics. So she was hoping still for her son, Satyavan, all happiness and joy. He has been blessed with the marriage of Savitri, this beautiful, great princess from far away. So she's hoping for everything for him and nothing for herself. But of course, she knew not of the evil drawing near. She doesn't know of his impending death. And Savitri's parents, heavy with the sorrow of a coming day and wondering at the carelessness of fate, who breaks with idle hands her supreme works, they parted from her with pain-fraught, burdened hearts. For they know Satyavan's fate. They know their daughter's husband will soon depart, pass away. But helpless against the choice of Savitri's heart, they left her to her rapture and her doom in the tremendous forest's savage charge. We continue.
Say, in the sequence of the story, they're coming into the forest, and they first stop to see the king and queen, right?
Yeah.
And so then you get the mixture of the situation of the blind king who's lost everything, and then she's mixing it with also, Savitri's parents. So the both parents are in a bad situation. And he's talking about both of them in the same paragraph.
Yeah.
And so there must be a lot of symbolic things in there which I can't quite get to all how it's unfolding. Because the blindness of one family and the unwillingness of the other family, how do you see that sequence there?
I haven't thought about it in any symbolic, deeper significance of it, but I mean, I think it's more along the storyline. Aswapati, he knows of the coming of Satyavan's death, but also he knows something of Savitri's strength and the possibility of her even overcoming this fate, because that was what he saw kind of in his vision, this shadow over Satyavan being chased away by a great light. So he's perhaps more hopeful, the mother perhaps less hopeful, more concerned and worried. Right, and he doesn't even come in to the story here. He's not even mentioned, I think. Oh. Yeah. He's not aware.
But it seems like when the story ends, you see he comes in, but Savitri turns still comes to the big party at the end. But Dumansena and his queen, they get all the, how do you say, the celebration.
Yeah.
So I don't know how this story,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, he regains his sight and his kingdom of.
But at the end of the story, you never hear that the queen and Aswapati are so happy that it all worked out.
Yeah, I think that's correct.
Come down, they just meet their parents. When they come after all the story that they had spoken heaven, they just meet them in the same place.
Yeah, well, I'm not absolutely positive, but I think you're probably right. Because they would be coming from far away, right?
And how to figure out, say, the meaning there in these symbols? That's the question.
Well, I'm not sure that every single thing has a symbolic significance, but.
And here he says they live forever. The parents live forever. I was wondering whether the daughter doesn't live, but it looks like they never met after that. Their daughter. In the story it is. Yeah, I don't know.
It would be also that Satyavan is the one child, so that is the one that whom everything for it. And the parents of Savitri know that they experience death, and they are living they have also their from one whom we shall never see again. So there's also something this losing, this years ago. So both parents have this that the one child they have may go, and they see it.
Yeah, maybe he's just hinting that they've departed from the story.
But Ashwati knows that she'll overcome death because
Yeah.
that's what he wanted in his yoga.
Yeah.
He knows he'll conquer and she'll be happy forever. But physically, I think they don't meet. This line 96 says.
Maybe Narad will fill them all in on the details. Yeah. Narad will fill in all the details.
Similar to what is in the is it Auroville's think, or is it the story in the Puranas and the normal Hindu scriptures?
Well, in general, the story is there, but Sri Aurobindo has elaborated it quite a bit Like there was nothing about this whole book of fate and I think there's just maybe one line about the queen, but here she assumes quite a significant role. And so, but he's elaborated much more. What was a few lines gets elaborated into, books or. So let's continue.
In the tremendous forest savage charge, all put behind her that was once her life, all welcomed that henceforth was his and hers. She abode with Satyavan in the wild woods. Priceless she deemed her joy, so close to death. Apart from love, she lived for love alone, as if self-poised above the march of days. Her immobile spirits watched the haste of time, a statue of passion and invincible force, an absolutism of sweet imperious will, a tranquility and the violence of the gods, indomitable and immutable. At first, to her beneath the sapphire heavens, the sylvan solitude was a gorgeous dream, an altar of the summer's splendor and fire, a sky-topped flower-hung palace of the gods, and all its scenes a smile on rapturous lips, and all its voices bards of happiness. There was a chanting in the casual wind. There was a glory in the least sunbeam. Night was a chrysoprase on velvet cloth, a nestling darkness or a moonlit day. Day was a purple pageant and a hymn, a wave of the laughter of light from morn to eve. His absence was a dream of memory. His presence was the empire of a god, a fusing of the joys of earth and heaven, a tremendous blaze of nuptial rapture past, a rushing of two spirits to be one, a burning of two bodies in one flame. Open were gates of unforgettable bliss, two lives were locked within an earthly heaven, and fate and grief fled from that fiery hour.
Thank you. Let's pause. So Sri Aurobindo does kind of mark this stage of Savitri leaving behind the past. Her parents left her to her rapture and her doom in the tremendous forest savage charge, and for her all put behind her that was once her life. So that story is finished. And now she's looking ahead to the future, all welcomed, that henceforth was his and hers. So she abode with Satyavan in the wild woods. Priceless, she deemed her joy, so close to death. Apart with love, she lived for love alone. So we see in this beginning that she's just immersed in this love of Satyavan and the beauty of the forest and the woods. It just seemed the sylvan solitude was like a gorgeous dream, an altar of the summer's splendor and fire, a sky-topped, flower-hung palace of the gods. And all its scenes a smile on rapture's lips, and all its voices bards of happiness. So it's also like a palace in a sense, except here it's nature's own palace of the forest rather than the marble colonnades. Everything she felt, this beauty, divinity perhaps in all the passing breezes and the least sunbeams, the night, a nestling darkness or a moonlit deep day was a purple pageant and a hymn, a wave of the laughter of light from morn to eve. Such beautiful poetry, the way Sri Aurobindo can describe the nature and their love. Oh, his absence. His absence was a dream of memory. His presence was the empire of a god. Yes. It's a apple green quartz gem. That it's a type of stone. So he's just comparing the night to this green gem on a velvet cloth. So we continue. Where are we? Suresh? Or you want to read? Or
so we come to the bad part now. But soon now failed the summer's ardent breath, and throngs of blue-black clouds crept through the sky, and rain fled sobbing over the dripping leaves, and storm became the forest's titan voice. Then listening to the thunder's fatal crash, and the fugitive pattering footsteps of the showers, the long unsatisfied panting of the wind, and sorrow muttering in the sound-vexed night, The grief of all the world came near to her. Night's darkness seemed a future's ominous face. The shadow of her lover's doom arose, and the fear laid hands upon her mortal heart. The moment swift and ruthless raced. Alarmed her thoughts, her mind remembers Narad's date. A trembling, moved accountant of her riches, she reckoned the insufficient days between. A dire expectancy knocked at her breast. Dreadful to her were the footsteps of the hours. Grief came, a passionate stranger to her gate. Banished when in his arm, out of her sleep, it rose at morn to look into her face. Vainly she fled into absence of bliss from her pursuing foresight of the end. The more she plunged into love, that anguish grew. Her deepest grief from sweetest gulfs arose. Remembrance was a poignant pang. She felt each day a golden leaf torn cruelly out from her too slender book of love and joy.
Thank you. Oh, it's nice how this beginning of Savitri's grief is begun here with this changing again of the season. The throngs of blue-black clouds crept through the sky, and rain fled sobbing over dripping leaves, and storm became the forest titan voice. So we sense that foreboding feeling that Savitri is going to begin to experience here in the weather. Night's darkness seemed to her future's ominous face. Night's darkness seemed her future's ominous face.
It's also interesting the line before that through this thunder and storm, she experienced the grief of all the world came near to her.
Oh, the grief of all the world came near to her.
Is activating in the world so much all around her, and she receives this.
Yeah, somehow she's maybe attuned to this wider consciousness, so her own grief, it becomes almost like she feels the universal grief in her own grief.
It's just expression of a grief. Like we say, all the world struggles that come to grief. Here in her yoga and elsewhere, she feels the grief of the whole world. But here she just means
Yeah. Mhm. It just may feel that way. Yeah, that's the thing. She is kind of taking on that grief and pain, right? She's perhaps not all aware of that yet, but somehow something within her maybe feels that way. But because we see this is something new for her also, grief came a passionate stranger to her gate. It was something she hadn't really ever experienced before. Banished when in his arms, out of her sleep it rose at morn to look into her face. And the more she plunged into love, that anguish grew. Her deepest grief from sweetest gulfs arose. Even as her love intensifies, so does her grief, because she knows soon she'll lose that. She felt each day a golden leaf torn cruelly out from her too slender book of love and joy. So yes, now we'll enter into the ordeal of knowing this dire fate. So we'll stop there for today, I think.
in that rough hewn homestead they gave, questioning no more the strangeness of her fate. Their pride and loved one to the great blind king, the regal pillar of fallen mightiness, and the stately care one woman once a queen, who now hoped nothing for herself from life, but all things only hope for her one child. They parted from her with pain-fraught, burdened heart, helpless against the choice of Savitri's heart. They left her to her rapture and her doom.